Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Week That Really Was with John McGurk and Sarah Ryan for Friday, the 2nd of February, 2024. Today, we're recording this on St. Bridget's Day, 1st of February, and it's been quite a busy week for news, Sarah. There's been a lot we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about, obviously, last weekend's big opinion poll, which showed Sinn Fein in trouble. We'll be talking about some of the criminal cases in the courts that have been jumping up this week. We'll be talking about the ongoing events of RTE. But first, Sarah, I want to break, even before you talk, some big news, which was that you got an award last week for your participation in last week's episode.
My first one.
Yeah. And I want to thank somebody calling themselves Doll Fox, which I presume is a pseudonym because that would be a strange thing to christen your child, sent us into the office a little Barbie doll, which they said was an award for you for your outstanding performance on last week's podcast, which drew a lot of favourable response from the public. I thought people would be scared off, to be honest with you. But no, instead, we're getting stuff like, well said, Sarah, you need your own show on News Talk. That's from Dermot Coyne. We have I Love You, Sarah Ryan, from somebody called Aish Lum. We have Sarah, no joke, speaks so much sense, from Goodfellas 5702. And then there was somebody who said, yeah, Sarah is getting better each week. Sorry, John, but Sarah is the reason I tune in. I wish Sarah was in politics. Well, fine. You take it away.
Nice. That's nice, isn't it? I'm particularly pleased with my Barbie.
Yeah, it's great.
I might give it to my daughter and be like, I've got some harsh news for you. Even if you play Barbie in the sequel, you still won't be deserving an Oscar. Tough shit.
Yeah, well, to be clear, Sarah has not actually formally received her award yet because it hasn't been, she hasn't come into the office to pick it up, but she will be getting it. So thank you so much for sending that in. It was really touching and funny and an interesting thought. Sarah, before we get into the topics of the week, how are you and how are things in the world of Sarah Ryan?
Good, yeah, can't complain. I'm just like glad January is over. It felt very long and the weather was crappy, and I am, even though I actually am one of those people who really, really, really hates January, I'm ready for a bit of an uptick in the weather. What do you think?
Yeah, you see, this is the thing. We're gonna hit now my favorite season of the year, my least favorite season of the year, which is fall spring. Because everyone thinks, oh, January's over, the weather is going to get so much better. No, it's not. You're going to hit fall spring. Fall spring is where at the start of February it gets a little bit brighter, stops raining as much, and you think, oh, spring is here, it's wonderful. And then the end of February and March comes, and that's the worst time of the year because everywhere is cold, it's flooded, the ground is mucky, it's horrible, which is the other Irish season of second winter. And then real spring comes in June. So yeah, I'm going to enjoy the relatively mild weather we've had for the last couple of days and then prepare myself for the worst.
Yeah, my abiding memory of like being in college and stuff like that is kind of around early February, kind of going, oh yeah, well, I'm kind of done with this coat and stuff now. It's spring, and then just being freezing for like February and March and April. Like St. Patrick's Day. My memory of St. Patrick's Day as a kid is that it's freezing.
Yeah, and usually wet and horrible. Anyway, we won't depress people too much with that when there's so much else happening to depress them with. I want to talk this week, because you got your rant in last week. I want to talk this week about somebody called Christine Ward and somebody else called Derek Bewley. Have you heard of these people?
I don't think so.
Christine Ward is 36 years old when, in 2018, she broke into a pensioner's house in Dublin. And basically, she had gone to this particular pensioner's house a couple of times before, asking for money and help and support because she was a mother and all the rest of it, and she claimed that she was ill. On this particular day, which I think was the 2nd of November 2018, she knocked on the front door. She told the pensioner that her cancer had come back, even though she'd never had cancer. And she needed some money, which he offered to give to her out of the goodness of his heart. She then barged in the door with her accomplice, a man called Derek Bewley. They hit him on the side of the head with a hammer. He's 79 years of age, as I said. They broke his hearing aid. They tortured him for the location of the money in his house. They stabbed him in the hands repeatedly, to the extent that when all was said and done, he had to have the whole lower end of his house redecorated to get rid of the blood, Sarah. And Then they left him and they made off with 600 euros in cash. They were sentenced this week. Christine Ward was sentenced. Derek Bewley hasn't been sentenced yet. She got 8 years in prison with the final 10 years, actually, with the final year and a half suspended. That's actually a fair sentence. I have no problem with that sentence. What I'm angry about is that between Miss Ward and Mr. Bewley, the assailants that day, this was their 105th conviction. They had 104 previous convictions between them. She was 36 years of age. And I just want to know, what I really want to know is, why is somebody like that on the streets when we have a justice system, the purpose of which we are told is to keep the public safe? So that's where I want to start. I mean, there are other cases as well I could mention. Stephen Ross. You talk first before I mention some others.
Like I agree with you to a point, but I think that the way in which like previous convictions are reported and kind of the numbers can sound more staggering. But if you would be surprised at how 100, and I know what you're going to say, but I'm just like let me play devil's advocate here for a minute. You'd be surprised how fast 104 convictions can like rack up if you've been, like 104 convictions might include, failure to present for a bench warrant. It might include, having possession of a small amount of cannabis. It might include lots of small things. It doesn't automatically mean that 104 violent acts such as the one that was done. Do you follow?
I do.
And you could pick up a number of convictions for one event. Like, failure, some kind of altercation where you get arrested, or what's the term? My brain. You're not listening to a guard. You're resisting arrest. Like things like that can rack up convictions. You might have one event where you go on a mad one day, and you might have 8 or 9 convictions for the one day. You know what I mean? And I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that you'd be surprised how fast these kind of those numbers can rack up.
Yeah, but I have no previous convictions.
Yeah.
How many do you have?
No.
No, see, and we're older than this lady. And look, I appreciate what you're saying, and there's truth.
It would have been funny, right, at that moment if you'd said, "How many do you have?" And I was like, "Well, this is really the time," but actually, I have 8.
I was confident.
Yeah.
But I get that. But at the same time, you don't rack up 104 without, purely on resisting arrest or not showing up for a bench warrant, because a bench warrant is only issued if you're to be in court for something else.
No, absolutely. But what I'm saying is that one event. So then you fail to present yourself in court. Then there's a bench warrant, and the entire bad day out can turn out to be like 12 things. Do you know what I mean?
But let me give you another example, because let me talk to somebody with no previous convictions. Stephen Russell. Stephen Russell is 47 years of age. He's a businessman from, I think, County Meath. He was in front of Judge Martin Nolan last week. I think it was the 25th of January. And what Stephen Russell did on a particular afternoon was he summoned a 10-year-old girl over to his car and rolled down the window, where he had his penis out of his pants and was masturbating himself, and asked the young girl if she liked it. The child was traumatized, ran away. There was some panic. Mr. Russell was arrested and pleaded guilty. Judge Martin Nolan decided that in sentencing him, he said that, this is obviously a first offence, and that Stephen Russell was, quote, a family man with responsibilities who was, quote, under a lot of stress at the time. Now, one might observe that many of us there, including me, occasionally endure a lot of stress without inflicting that sort of thing on children. Nevertheless, Mr. Russell got a fully suspended sentence and was not sentenced to any prison time at all. What do you think of that one?
Obviously, I mean, first of all, I hate the inference that, like, you obviously have a sexual attraction to a child, so that's your sexual orientation doesn't change with stress.
No, it doesn't.
So, like, I've had some pretty stressful moments, like, in my life as a 40-year-old woman, and I've never, for example, looked across at a dog and went, "Oh, I suddenly find that dog super sexy," because whatever, bestiality. I'm just trying to think of something. Like, but do you know what I mean? Like, there's no, you didn't find a little girl attractive all of a sudden because you were stressed out. So that's a bullshit statement to be making in the first place. Like, stress can be used as an excuse for somebody who got steaming drunk one afternoon and made a bit of a show of themselves in the local pub and caused a bit of a kerfuffle with the police when they came to take them away. Yeah, I could go a long way on accepting stress as something like that. But you don't suddenly sit there, you know, like with your trousers around your ankles, whatever's going on there, and suddenly want a child to get involved in it because you're stressed. I find that to be an absurd excuse.
Yeah, I find it extraordinary because, I mean, to me, if you commit that kind of offence, it's a compulsive offence.
Yeah,
it's and it's based clearly, as you rightly point out, of some kind of sexual thrill directed at that young child. And I think you are a danger to the public and should not be on the streets.
Well, it's the same principle, and obviously not making any suggestion of particular set of circumstances, but in general, it's the same principle as why, you know, police. I remember being a kid, and you know, the way you'd hear these stories about men in parks with trench coats on, flashers, basically, and you know that it was, you know, you were people reporting it to the police or whatever. And I can remember being an innocent kind of like kid hearing this and being like, why would the police care about that? You know what I mean? Like, he's obviously just a weirdo, but like no harm. But part of the reason why the police care very much about that, apart from the fact that it is violating for the person who experiences it, fine. And I was just too young to kind of understand that. But also because there's, you know, strong evidence to suggest that people who do that don't do that forever, that they eventually, the thrill wears off and there's a kind of a next thing and the next thing and the next thing because it's a compulsive behaviour.
Yeah, it can escalate. And that's not to say it will in this case. And let's hope for the sake of Irish society that Judge Nolan is right and this was a once-off. But even at that, is there not supposed to be a punishment element to the criminal justice system? Like, I think I'm in the majority of the public in believing that somebody who does something like that to a child should spend some time in prison. Because there needs to be a deterrent effect. Because this isn't the first. Like, all the way back in 2015, there was a man who was in front of the same judge. And I don't want to pick on that particular judge because he's by no means on his own. But there was a man who invited a 15-year-old girl into his white van and exposed himself and also walked away with a suspended sentence. So it's a consistent, I mean, the policy of the courts here is that kind of offence doesn't get you jail. Well,
there's a limit to what a sentence a judge can impose. You know what I mean? There's parameters.
There is, but you know, it's not as if there's somewhere in legislation saying that this is not a jail time offence. I think there's a maximum sentence of 2.5 years or something for it. But I haven't got the legislation in front of me. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But it's not as if the judges are mandated to issue suspended sentences. But let's come back to somebody with previous conviction, because there was another one. This is the last week, Sarah. There's a 52-year-old grandfather by the name of Jason Kennedy. Now, when you hear grandfather, you probably think kindly old chap. But no, Mr. Kennedy, not so kindly. He was out on a date with a woman. He'd met her once or twice. There was an argument, apparently, which resulted in him stealing her car. But before he stole her car, he battered her about the head and left her on the ground, assaulted her. He then drove the car away 300 meters up the road, crashed the car. The Gardaí arrived on the scene. This might be a good example of what you're talking about, by the way, in terms of racking up convictions on the one day. Mr. Kennedy had quite a day. The Gardaí then arrived on the scene.
Say nothing. I'm sorry, but like, say nothing for the date. Sounds great.
It doesn't sound like the greatest date that poor lady ever had.
Imagine the next day her friends like, how did the date go? Well, I've no car, starters, and I got the head boxed off me, so not great.
Yeah. Anyway, the two guards arrived to arrest him, and he assaulted the two of them and broke one of their hands before being subdued. Mr. Kennedy arrived into court to be sentenced in front of, again, Judge Nolan, and he got just over 5 years. But this was his 101st conviction. And my favourite bit was that Judge Nolan apparently asked him, he said, "When are you going to learn, Mr. Kennedy?" And
the answer being not today.
Not today, but also maybe that question could have been asked after, I don't know, the 25th conviction. Because it just seems to me that a lot of this sentence, like the number of people, do you remember the case of the women, the young woman who was raped in a car on a Dublin beach by three very young offenders. Like they had only just reached the age of majority, to the extent that they weren't even named. But one of them had like 174 convictions or something. And I'm just asking myself here, so what kind of society do we live in where we've got people with all these convictions wandering the streets free to commit crimes? That was all those cases I mentioned were in the last 2 weeks. It's not as if this is I'm cherry picking. This is just in the last 2 weeks in the courts.
Yeah, I mean, look, so there's, I mean, like not to speak, just to speak in general, like there is, you know, sometimes people have, that man is what, did you say 70 something years of age? Like sometimes people have a huge amount of convictions, but they haven't had any for 30 years. Sometimes.
No, he was 52.
Oh, sorry.
The guy who's in the 70s was the victim of the first two. He was the guy who was stabbed. He was 79.
The 52-year-old was a grandfather. Is that the one that was a grandfather?
52-year-old grandfather. I'm just saying, when you hear grandfather, you sometimes think kindly old chap, but no, this guy's 52 and he's grandfather with 100. Now at least 101 convictions, and presumably he's got multiple more convictions.
You know, like there will be a barrister, like, so sometimes what you will see is somebody who has done a crime, like let's go back to your original one, Christine Ward, right? Let's say, and she'll have a barrister who will have gone in, and in between the events happening and then her sentencing and, you know, conviction and sentencing, she might have undergone a drug rehabilitation program. Her barrister will be standing up and giving a plea to mitigate her sentence on behalf of, like, the fact that she might have done, like I said, a drug rehabilitation program. She might have children. She might have circumstances. Like sometimes it's not as clear. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying, like, sometimes there is other factors, but you know, I think that there are certain crimes, particularly, you know, ones of a sexual nature, that need the sentencing parameters to be widened, like, for sure. And you can't blame Judge Nolan if Judge Nolan is given a maximum sentencing of between, you know, like whether it's a summary or indictment or whatever it is, of like up to 2.5 years, maximum of up to 2.5 years, and then complain when he gives 2 years and 2 months. It's not like,
no, I accept
you can't.
I fully accept that. Fully accept that. I
think Judge Nolan gets a lot of heat because the nature of the court that he sits in is that a lot of these cases end up in front of him, but he's only able to sentence within the sentencing parameters.
He is, but he gives a lot of suspended sentences for things that don't necessarily require suspended sentences, like indecent exposure being an example. I'm not even, I don't want to make this about Judge Nolan, because I don't think ultimately this is about the judges. I think it's about the political system. Because of the fact we haven't built any new prisons in 20 years. I think it's about a justice minister who, not just her, because she's the latest in a long string of Fine Gael justice ministers, who have been content with to let this kind of situation evolve. Because I have sat in those courts, because every now and again, I mean, I think about 3 times in my life, I've had because I've changed addresses a lot. Now I sound like a dependent, but I changed addresses a lot in this sort of in between the ages of 25 and 35, right? And every now and again, I'd
sounds like you're on the run.
Yeah, it does. But anyway, I think twice I was in the district court or the circuit court trying to explain to a judge why I hadn't paid the speeding fine, because I hadn't got the thing up. The notification, and paid the fine, took the points, nothing like that. But you go there and you watch the list, and it's exactly what you say. It is, my client has 60 previous convictions, but he's got 3 kids and he's a good family man. The family needs his income and all the rest of it. But what always strikes me is that inside the Irish criminal justice system, the criminals are almost treated like the victims. Mm-hmm. Like there's a sense that, you know, society has wronged this poor gentleman, and that's the only reason why he's you know, breaking a guard's hand or stealing his girlfriend's car, or in the case of Nathan Kirby, another man this week, punching a 76-year-old man in the streets. There's no sense here that society needs to be protected from the criminals, but there's a huge sense that kind of society needs to do right by the criminal. You know, don't punish him because, you know, it's not fair on other people. I just think it's all backwards.
Yeah, and I also think that, like, you know, there's an interesting guy, American kind of business philosopher, and I worked with him at one point in my career, and he looks at businesses and lots of things as everything really as a series of conversations, and that where problems arise, and I'm paraphrasing this very, very badly, but that where problems arise, it's usually as a result of people being in the wrong conversation. And it strikes me that we have a government that are in the complete wrong conversation, as you're pointing out, when it comes to law and order. Fine Gael are supposedly the law and order party, but I always get the distinct impression when it comes to these kind of conversations that they're really not interested in in having any kind of reform of law and order in Ireland about sentencing of prisons, unless it's something that is driven specifically by a certain agenda. Like I noticed this week that there was a lot of outrage, for example, about the fact that Holly Kearns had to close her constituency office because of effectively a stalker. Would that be the right word?
I think that's a fair description of the situation.
Right.
I think there was one person. I don't know if anyone. I can't remember off the top of my head if anyone was ever arrested for it, but definitely she had a creepy thing going on there.
Yeah, and people being outraged about the fact that had happened, and I'm not diminishing that whatsoever. And I think that is outrageous. And if she had to close her office because of that reason, like that is completely absurd. But what I noticed was the level of outrage and the kind of that's the kind of thing that would really fast and really quickly drive some kind of reform in law. Let's just pretend on stalking or something, because that's driving a certain agenda, or that's, addressing something that's become. And I'm not saying that it's only because it's affecting politicians themselves personally. I'm saying that, there are things that are kind of that look good because they make us look good, and if so, we'll do that. But then there's things to do with law and order that are huge problems, that have been problems for a long, long time, and we don't like the optics of it, so we'll ignore it, like building bigger prisons. Like crowding in prisons is a big issue.
Yeah. Do
you know what I mean? Like there's a problem there, but nobody ever wants to grasp that nettle because they don't like the idea of what it might make them look like. It's almost like it makes them look like they're, it's defeatist to build bigger prisons. And surely if we keep investing loads and loads of money into local areas, and if we keep, building sports fields, people will just stop going to prison. But the reality of it is population is growing. We need bigger prisons. That's it. And nobody wants to do that. So I think that the government for a long time has been in the complete wrong conversation about law and order. And they think it's about, the story of the person who's committed the crime, and they've forgotten that ultimately, the conversation that's happening is that the person they should be worried about is Joe Public. Do you know what I mean? That we're the people like that pay all the money. You know what I mean? Like we're the people who invest all of our whatever. The biggest single payment that we make every month is to the state. Do you know what I mean? We're the ones who are paying for this, and they've forgotten all about us. And it's about the victims. They think the victim is the person who's carrying out the crime, but they don't. They forget that it's not, and it's all orientated in the wrong direction. It's all the wrong conversation. And I think that, the problem is that it's like a lot of things, like it never becomes that big of an election issue because people have bigger fish to fry. But it's slowly, particularly for Fine Gael, like basically chipping away at their base, because I think the type of people who are loyal Fine Gael voters are just getting a bit peed off with the lack of progress, or any progress whatsoever. Not even progress, actually. We're going backwards.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you were talking about there in terms of and I'll just say what they are: trendy causes cases. And that is not to diminish at all what happened to Holly Kearns, which is an awful crime, but it's also a trendy cause. Like a couple of years ago, I think about a year and a half ago, remember, we had this huge push for new laws around revenge porn, because it was a little campaign group, and I think one of the things that's now illegal is to repost somebody's pictures of themselves that they post on OnlyFans, which is a paid site where women post pictures of themselves. Gentlemen pay, or possibly some ladies pay. I don't know.
That's all fine. But that's fine.
Right? Yeah, there's nothing wrong. That should be a crime. It should be a crime.
But there's also like obviously I presume state funded ads on the radio explaining how, if you like, about what revenge porn is, and how if you even threaten it, you can be prosecuted and whatnot. Like, a huge amount of time and money has gone into that. And I'm not saying that that's not a good idea, but it's like you say, it's because it's trendy. What's not trendy is the poor old 70-something-year-old dude in his house getting his hands bashed up and the head knocked off him for money by two people. Yeah. That's not really that trendy.
There's no ads on the radio telling you not to bash people over the heads with hammers. And yet that's a much bigger issue in society. Kind of casual assaults and stabbings and knifings and what have you is becoming a growing issue in society. But we are all focused on whether two people on a drunken night out had fully signed a consent contract. And I just think it's a symptom of this government's kind of warped priorities, put it that way.
Yeah. And I think that Fine Gael in particular will get that message from their voter base, because I think their voter base has traditionally been the one who's the most concerned with law and order. But I think that there's reform needed across multiple areas there. And like I said, I just don't think that anybody who is willing to grasp the nettle on things that aren't, a massive virtue signal for their whatever ideological cause they're trying to push.
Anyway, we'll move on. Before we do, I just want to say on this show that I was fairly shocked today to hear about the death, Sarah, of Lisa Murphy, who most listeners probably won't have a clue who she was. You may know her. She was a model and a reality TV star who was probably best known for being the long-term girlfriend of celebrity solicitor Gerald Keane for a long time. But she died very young. She was only 51 after a short illness. And I have to say I was taken aback, because she was a person, I met her only 5 or 6 times, but somebody who just, I remember on one particular occasion, and I won't go into the details, when she had no cause to know me, to be particularly kind, she went out of her way to make a huge difference in something that I was doing. She was a very, very kind person. And I think everyone who knew her would have said the same thing. And it's very sad for somebody that dies very young. So just condolences to her family, and indeed to Dr. Keane and to everybody. You never met her, did you?
I think I met her once, really briefly, but it's weird because she popped into my head a while ago, and I was looking up, on social media. I was wondering where she'd gone to. But she always seemed like a lovely person. And I was in TV3 for years and used to do the Elaine show, or midday at one point, for 7 years. And, I came across her, and a lot of people that I knew her. So we had a lot of friends in common. And I've never, ever, ever heard anybody say anything but that she was a particularly lovely person.
Yeah, and that is why it actually strikes you more sometimes when you only meet a person once or twice, if they're incredibly nice and they go incredibly out there. Yeah, just very sad. Anyway, we want to talk about something. We talked about crime. You had your eye caught by a particular kind of new study that came out. Was it in the US, the study about men and women?
No, it's across different countries, actually. Somebody tweeted this to us, as far as I know. And it's so interesting. So basically the gist of it is in the Financial Times, and the headline is "A New Global Gender Divide is Emerging." And it's basically about how, and it goes through different countries. I'll get to that in a minute. But that traditionally over, the last 100 years or whatever, each generation, the kind of the views and the positioning of the sexes was usually the same. So if you were, let's just make it up, if in the 80s in America it was kind of like 60% conservative, 40% liberal, that usually split down the middle of men and women. And the article is talking about how now young men and women's worldviews are kind of pulling apart, and how men are becoming more conservative and women are becoming more liberal, and the potential kind of impact that will have long term. And it's so interesting. So if you think about it, like if you start to conceptualize that men are becoming more conservative than women, well then, so basically the people of the same age no longer see eye to eye on key issues. So then the impacts that has on dating, on marriages, on the workplace is huge. So the article talks about in the US that Gallup data showing that while the sexes were usually equally liberal and conservative, equally, women aged 18 to 30 are now 30 percentage points more liberal than their male contemporaries. And that gap opened up just over a 6-year period. So if you play that out, it's really, really interesting. Like, if you think about it, like you're conservative, right? You've always been a conservative since college. Would that be right? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, from before probably, but yeah.
Yeah. And so, but when you were growing up as a conservative, were you in the, what would you say? Were you 50-50? I mean, I would say I was conservative. No, I was kind of conservative leaning, but like, I think that the more liberal views were certainly more vocal, but there was always conservatives there.
Well, I was in Trinity College Dublin, of all places. So as a conservative, you're outnumbered there, both by men and by women. So it wasn't that I don't really have a frame, except that I've always felt a little bit in a minority. But I think that's not the point. I think the point is that, you know, when I was young and dating, in inverted commas, almost all of my girlfriends in college, and then I didn't have a girlfriend for a long time in my 20s, but anyone I was kind of casually dating, women were always more liberal than me. Like, but the thing was, they were always open to a relationship with somebody who disagreed with them. And when I talk to young men now, and when I look at the sort of the studies on this, including the one you're mentioning, the issue is not so much the political polarization; it's the unwillingness, in particular, of liberal women to date people who disagree with them. That's the issue. So apparently this is a huge issue now on American dating sites in particular, where women will put down that their husband or the man they're dating, that they're looking for a 6 feet tall, good income, you know, kind and all the rest of it, but don't want to date a Trump voter, for example, which is a big red line to draw, I think.
Well, I'm actually going to go a bit further than that and take the risk of getting annihilated by my sisters. I've seen, I think that I've seen a lot of stuff on TikTok lately, that this trend of videos where they're talking to women about, you know, exactly what you just said, like what their red line issues are, what they will, and they give out this kind of list, right, of, you know, well, I wouldn't date a man who is I'm going to make it up, less than 6 foot, has to earn this amount of money, has to be this, has to be that, and I'd like him to go to the gym, and I'd like this, and I'd like that, and it's just a bit like, well, A, it's nonsense, but second of all, very often the women, because some of these are videos, are, to put it politely, not gym goers themselves, and not necessarily big earners. Like, they'll be talking about what they do afterwards, like not earners, whatever. And I think that, like, the level of kind of entitlement and arrogance is kind of astounding. Like, that you think that you have a long list of people. Like, I mean, there's a really, really interesting relationship expert. She's French. God, her name has gone out of my head now. She does these videos, and she does a podcast called, Estelle Perez is her name. She does a podcast called Where Shall We Begin, which got really popular, and it's about marriage counselling, and the people who are being recorded they're one-off episodes about different issues within marriage and relationships, and they're very interesting. And she's a series of TED Talks about divorce and affairs and relationships, and it's very, like, she's really interesting, and anybody who's interested in that kind of thing should definitely give it a listen. But she has a TED Talk. I'm pretty sure it was her, a talk. Well, it might have been someone else. But anyway, the point is that, like, the line I always took away from it was, the best time to work on your marriage is before you're in one. And the idea that you will be rolling out a long list of things that men have to be and can't think and can't do and whatever, without clearly having done any work on yourself, is a symptom of a disease, if you ask me, of entitlement, obliviousness, and bratish behavior. I mean, who do you think you are to say that you're only interested in men who have earned a certain amount of money, are a certain height, do this, do that, and don't have these views? Why don't you do a bit of work on yourself? It's just so unattractive. And when I look at those videos, because this is a series of videos. Like I've seen loads of them. And I look at those videos of these women and I think about not like, I mean, my son, I have two sons, fine. They're children. They're 5 and 7. So this is a long way off of them. But I think about men I grew up with, brother, cousins, lots of men that I know who are really nice and, whatever. And I think like, it just kind of annoys me on their behalf. Like, do you know what I mean? Like guys who worked really hard and guys who, I don't know, might not have been tall, might not have been this. And for them to be and I've noticed it, like it's become really okay in the last particularly in the last 10 years. You and I discussed this, I think, at one point, not on the podcast maybe, but there was a Love Island a few years ago where all of the girls were just slating this guy who was in Love Island because he wasn't tall. And it was like, and I just remember thinking, there's no way there would be literally an expulsion from the Love Island house or whatever it is if a guy made a comment about how he wasn't interested in a woman because she was too chubby or her ankles or her this or her that. It would be unheard of. But it's okay to say, I wouldn't be with a guy who's short. That guy's too, he doesn't go to the gym enough. He's not earning enough. Like, geez, like I've said on this, like shout out for the hardworking guys who just go out and do hard, boring physical jobs. Like they've all just been tossed on the bonfire of woke madness. And it's just like, then you have this, frankly, a lot of the time, not very attractive, not gym going, chubby girl who thinks that she's got a right to slate all these guys as not being good enough for her because they're not earning enough. Like talk about get a grip of yourself about Barbie. Get a grip of your own reality, love.
But do you not think they're doing themselves more harm than anything else? Because I'm fascinated. I say I'm fast. I could talk about sort of gender wars stuff all day because I'm fascinated by it. Like these women are ultimately damaging their own prospects for the simple reason that, I mean, so there was an article in I think it was the Atlantic, but it could have been the New Yorker, but it was about a month or so ago about this whole 666 rule, which is 6 feet tall, 6-figure income, and depending on what hour of the day it is, the third one is either possesses of a 6-pack or possesses 6 inches in a particular part of their anatomy. But it's basically this sort of the 666 rule, and I'm thinking there are a limited number of men in the world who fit those criteria, and those men presumably are doing very well for themselves in the dating marketplace in places like New York and London and possibly South Dublin. I don't know, but they're doing very well for themselves in the marketplace. So well that they probably don't have to worry about settling for a woman. They can pick any one of 6 on a given night of the week on their phone on Tinder or Bumble or any of those things. But those men then have their literal pick of the gazillions of women who believe this stuff. Whereas if you are one of the poor unfortunate women that you mentioned who maybe wouldn't be one of those men's first choice, and you basically condemning yourself to a life of spinsterhood. So that's what.
But it's also part of that. But it's great because
are we allowed to say spinsters anymore? I didn't mean it in a mean way, just in case anyone picks it up. But
it fits it. But it fits into the victim complex because then it's like oh well, like it's reinforcing your nonsense that like the men are shallow and nobody wants you, whatever. Like no. You're being horrible about men. Like how much of that kind of like snide, like put down are men supposed to take before they're just like not interested in you?
Yeah, but this is all giving rise to another thing too, which is this opening gulf on the male side of the aisle between the men who sort of fit the bill, then a sort of middle group of men who kind of like do okay, but probably because they're trying to date sensible women. But then there's this rise of what's called incel culture, which is men who describe themselves as involuntarily celibate, i.e. they can't find women to partner with, and as a result are getting very angry at the world and forming their own little political movement and all that sort of stuff. And it's contributing to a degree of right-wing radicalization amongst particular men and sort of the rise of anti-feminism. It's so toxic. It's all so.
Do you think that that's why men are becoming are becoming more conservative?
I think it's all part of the polarization process. I also think it's why women are becoming more left-wing and feminist and progressive. It's driving. It's an equal and opposite reaction. But yeah, if you want to ask what is driving it, I think it's dating apps. I absolutely think it's dating apps.
I think it's also interesting because like certain things come full circle, and like it's like if you're if your top three things about men are how much they earn, then you're not a feminist, because if you actually had your own money, you wouldn't give a shit.
But do you not think it is inherently normal that women are more picky in the dating market than men? If you just go back to the basic genetic theory here of sort of the male thinking of us not as sort of like sacred divine beings, thinking of us purely as mammals. The male objective is obviously to spread his genetic material as far and wide within society as possible. So in that, you're going to be picky to an extent, but not wholly picky. Whereas a woman can only reproduce less times in her lifetime than a man theoretically can. So she's going to be more picky about what his body is like, what his income is like, what his intelligence is like, and all the rest of it. That's a normal thing. And I think that's always been the case. But what dating apps are doing is turbocharging that reverse pickiness. So you've got some guy sitting, I think it's swipe. I hand on heart, I've never been on a dating app in my life and never will be, hopefully. But I believe you swipe. So you can imagine men are going to swipe at a much higher rate than women because they're less picky. Once somebody hits like 4 out of 7 criteria, you might say, yeah.
I think men are more shallow about physical appearance than women.
Within a wider range, yes. I mean, like,
well, if it's just for a one night thing, they would just swipe at it like for everyone, kind of thing.
Not for everybody. I mean, there's a risk here. I'll end up talking about myself, and since I don't swipe, I wouldn't know. But like, yeah. I would guess. I will say, I will use my own example to say that, yeah, there's a wide range of women that I would find attractive. And there are particular, if we're talking purely looks, there are particular things I wouldn't necessarily find attractive. But there's a wide range of women I could find attractive. Whereas I think with women, there's a narrower range of men. Am I wrong?
Well, yeah, kind of you are. I mean, I think that...
If we're just talking looks, just talking looks.
But I think that looks matter less for women. Like, I honestly think, and this is, there's unfairness on both sides, whatever, but like, I think a man has way more chance of overcoming being not great looking with personality than a woman does. Like, there are men out there who are not that good looking, but they are funny and they're attractive and they're like cleaning up. But women aren't able to do that in the same way. If you're like not a particularly attractive woman, but you've got a brilliant, amazing personality and you're really funny or whatever, you do not do as well with men as you do if in the reverse. That's a hill I will die on.
There's an argument that says that, but there's the flip side of that is that if you are just looking for a one night stand, it's almost certainly easier as a woman, no matter what your looks are like. Which is is the reverse of that. So I do think dating apps allow women to discard more men more casually than they would have done in a bar, for example, because they don't give you a chance. If you're a man, as you say, you're a man and you don't necessarily fit the 666 criteria, then you've obviously got something else. You're funny, maybe you're very intelligent, you're X, Y, and Z. But you can only really show those traits in person, maybe over a half hour of conversation or 20-minute conversation or telling a good opening joke. On a dating app, you don't have those opportunities, so you get passed over because they look at your kind of like your vital statistics, your kind of income bracket, whether you're a smoker, those things that are red lines. So I think it is enabling this kind of it's made dating much harder for men, which is, I mean, nobody knew what incels were 10 years ago. They didn't exist. Now they do.
But it's interesting to think, like, to come back to the thing, like that long term. Like, people, the men and women being so, the gulf between them widening like that means that men will be looking, like if men are becoming more conservative, they'll be looking for a type of woman that exists less, and women will be looking for a type of man that exists less. So what's the result of that? The result of that is a lot more single people.
Yeah, a lot. Well, I think there's a couple of things. A lot of these people won't stay single forever. They'll eventually cop themselves on, but by then they'll be in their middle 30s or late 30s or whatever. So you're looking at a further increase in the age of marriage and family formation, which is bad for fertility. You're also looking at a rise of people who never pair up, which is bad for happiness and stability and sort of general sort of societal well-being. And I think a lot of people who end up being single at 40 and 50 who realize that,
like particularly from those videos they're watching, who realized that a lot of the stuff, the criteria that they were setting themselves were nonsense, and they met a lot of really, really nice guys that they passed up.
We should say there are some people who are happily single. I know one guy in particular, actually, you know him as well, who is happily single and delighted to be single at that age, and just likes his life and doesn't want the competition. And
I think I know who you're talking about, and he seems happy to be.
And fair play for that. But there are also a lot of people who kind of like, I think, are going to end up unhappily single.
But like what we're talking about is the people who are standing there saying they want to meet somebody, but they're only interested in people who have a 6-figure salary, who are over 6 foot, and who are this, that, and the other, who are doing no work on themselves, and who are setting out this shopping list of things in the other person, and it's a complete joke for everyone concerned. And but well, I don't know what will happen to them, but again.
It's an interesting topic, and we will definitely come back to it, because I think it's one of these things. It's happening in society that people just aren't really fully cognizant of yet, but it's happening, and it's the consequences are going to unfurl. And you see it, by the way, it's impacting politics as well, because you said you're going to mention some of the countries. I think, for example, in Poland at the last election, like something like 30% of young men voted for it, the most right-wing electable party. And I think the equivalent figure for women was like 2%. And a lot of them voted for the most left. It wasn't just like one voting Labour, the other voting Conservative in the UK. It was like one bunch is voting, to use an Irish example, for the Irish Freedom Party, and the other lot are voting for People Before Profit. The polarisation politically is becoming incredible. It's not just minor disagreements. It's a fundamentally different view of society.
And they've also, like, there's a certain age group that, in fairness, it's across all ages, but I've particularly noticed it in a certain age group, slightly younger than us and down, which is that they've made a kind of a virtue out of just being completely unwilling to listen or talk to people who have different views from you.
Yeah.
And so that they won't even talk to them. Like, I've seen it with my own eyes at events, particular event. I'm not going to get into the details because it'll kind of show who it is, but where people have realised that the person sitting beside them has a certain view on transgender issues, and have turned their back to them for the entire dinner and refused to speak to them again.
Yeah, I think you told me about that. It's definitely happening.
So I don't know.
Anyway, we'll come back to that one. We should mention RTE. You wanted to talk about RTE, didn't you?
Well, I loved it. I lolled. I laughed aloud today, John, because Minister Catherine Martin from the Green Party, she said today that a series of reports into RTE's finances point to a dysfunctionality at the broadcaster. Fair play to her. She woke up. Did someone dig her up from underneath a swimming pool? Maybe 2 American teenagers, and now they're trying to ingratiate her into society. Is that a joke? Dysfunctionality. Wakey. Where have you been for the last year?
She's only the minister responsible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's some dysfunctionality there. Fair play to you. She earned her salary today, didn't she? I mean, like, come on. I'm sorry. I don't mean to personalise it, because like I will be fair and say I hope all of the Green Party get annihilated and wiped out in the next general election. But that's a stupid thing to say, and aggravating for people when you're talking about, when conversations are going on about everything from golden handshakes that were given, exit packages that were given to the former chief financial officer, and that it wasn't even considered and approved by the executive board, the toy show debacle, everything that's been happening, and
the fact that Ryan Tubridy earned €555,000 in 2022.
Yeah,
as we learned this week.
Exactly, and the fact that that's all underneath the umbrella of the conversation about the TV license and how that might be inflicted on us, whether we like it or not. I know we talked about it last week, and they abandoned the idea of putting a tax on the broadband bills or whatever, but like still that conversation is ongoing, and that will be returned in a different in a different outfit next month and the month after that. Like to come out and say, yeah, no, it's pretty dysfunctional, isn't it, is farcical.
Well, there's one rule in my house, as listeners know, and it is the best rule, and I promise you your mood will improve. If you don't do this, I promise you it will improve your general mood, which is that RTE is not allowed on television, it's not allowed on the radio. It is just never on. For the simple reason that anytime my parents, for example, watch it, I go and visit them every now and again, and I'll sit there and I'll sit through the RTE61 news and then into Fair City and then into, I don't know, Nationwide or something that's on after that. And you just end up depressed. Because everything is painted in a particular light. It's all the sub. Even the news is formulaic. There's always the 10-minute sob story. There's always an interview with somebody who's incompetent but pretending that they're not. Like the soft interview. I can't watch it, but I do every now and again see on social media where they post clips of their news reports. And this week they posted a clip of their news report on the new bottle return program that's happening this week. And Sarah, it was an infomercial. Like it was literally, here's how to return your bottles. Here's what a fantastic scheme it is. Here are 3 random members of the public, completely at random, of course, who love the scheme. Here's like why we need to do it for climate change. I'm like, is this journalism, or is this something that the government has paid you to produce?
It's kind of like the early days. Remember when they would do like a kind of an advertorial within a newspaper, and you'd be kind of like, this doesn't read right, and then you'd realize that it was actually an ad.
Yeah,
it's kind
that's
of like
what it was like. It was like an advertorial. And they did a similar one. Mary O'Regan. I have a lot of time for Mary O'Regan. She's one of the political correspondents there. They did one on the referendums, and it was about the women in the home referendum. And I swear they used footage of like women. I don't know if women were literally chained to the sink or not, but it was black and white. It was from the 1930s, and there were like 17 kids around this poor woman who clearly just did nothing but pop out kids and wash the dishes. And it was just like, this is what a yes vote will be getting rid of. And they're like, no.
Yeah. Although what I will say is, like I said last week about the Barbie thing and then and this referendum, if you watch that and actually came away from it and you think that actually, that, woman with the kids and whatever, and that has impacted it, then you're what I'm going to frequently refer back to as your dum-dums who should, you're too stupid. You're stupid if you think that. Like, if you believe
but
you're stupid. I'm sorry. No, you're a stupid person, because there's no woman in Ireland right now who knows anybody who's stayed at home because of that piece of the Constitution, whose life has been affected in any way by that piece of the Constitution. So if you believe that, you would literally swallow a brick and just go for your life. Go watch Barbie. You're a dum-dum. I'm sorry.
Well, Fintan O'Toole made a valiant effort this week. Fintan O'Toole made a valiant effort to rescue I'm not going to say rescue the campaign, because for all I know, this thing's going to pass. Maybe people aren't paying attention. They're just like, yeah, I don't like that language. Women in the home seems a bit outdated. I'll vote against it. But at present, there's no intellectual case for a yes vote. It's purely a sort of emotive, maybe the language is outdated, do no harm to get rid of it. Like that's the sum total of the yes campaign. The sensible yes campaign. But Fintan O'Toole, who needs an intellectual basis for everything, in fairness to him, which is not a criticism at all. It's always a good idea to have some kind of thinking underpinning your beliefs. He decided to rescue the yes campaign by writing a piece basically saying that, of course, this article of the Constitution had negative impacts. Sure, just look at the marriage bar, which was in place until I think about 1977 or 1973 maybe, which said that women had to leave the civil service once they got married. And this was an example of women in the home impacting on real life. But of course,
2023.
Well, yeah, first of all, it's 2023 and that doesn't exist. So if the Constitution required it, why is it gone? And number two, they had a marriage bar in the UK, which doesn't even have a written constitution. In fact, that's where we got it from. The marriage bar didn't come from the Catholic Church in Ireland. It came from UK law, which we inherited and didn't bother changing until 1973, even though Brits got rid of it earlier. And they also had it in various states in the US during the New Deal when Franklin Roosevelt wanted to get men back to work. One of the things he did was kick women out of work once they got married.
Yeah.
So like it's just it's so empty. There's no that was Fintan giving it his best shot, and that's all he could come up with, which is an argument that a 2-year-old could respond to by just looking at the facts. So yeah,
I think it won't pass, but I think that the momentum is on the no side for both of them. Um, Speaking of which, there is a rally this weekend on Saturday for the No side, isn't there?
Yes, being organised by the Countess. Now, obviously, for the sake of balance, we should say that there are also various Yes campaign events going on around the country. And if there's one that's a rally, we'll certainly mention it. But I think the Countess is organising a Vote No march on Saturday.
You could say, you could, in the interest of, you could say that, but I won't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's on Saturday, starting at the Garden of Remembrance.
Are you going? Are you going to dress up as like a?
I actually can't go because it is my husband's birthday. The days after that.
That's hilariously patriarchal. You can't go to a women's march because you have to look after your.
Well, birthday. John, it's funny you should mention that, because the only reason I'm not able to go is because, ironically, of that piece of the Constitution is actually blocking me from going. So,
yeah.
If it was removed, I'd be able to go.
Yeah, your place is in the home with your husband on his special day.
By recognizing the contribution I make by staying at home with my children, you have blocked me from going out. 2:00 in the Garden of Remembrance this Saturday. There you go.
All right. Let's talk as we move towards the end of our hour. Let's talk about the opinion poll of the weekend, because I know, in fairness, for those of you who don't know Sarah, she's a wonderful person, but she loves a good opinion poll.
I love a poll. I love an L poll. I wasn't surprised. I think that I can feel the Sinn Fein momentum, or the support slipping away. I don't think they've done themselves any favours on the immigration thing. I think they've tried to hide in the weeds on a number of issues, and I think that has meant that they are losing support, and in a big way. I think I'm also surprised that they're supporting both of the referendums, because I think it would have been a little bit more politically savvy to come out and carve out an identity for themselves on something, because I think that they're not. And I said before that they feel very tired for people who are supposedly waiting to govern.
You've said that on this show, and Jason O'Mahony, who's a good friend of both of ours, who listeners may know or know of, has said the same. They kind of feel like a party in their 15th year of government, even though they've never been in one.
Yeah.
You've just been watching them for so long and listening to them for so long. Like, there won't be any real sense of kind of renewal when they get into power. I think, obviously, if you're a hardcore Sinn Fein voter listening to this, and the day that they take power is your wildest dream, you're not going to agree with me. But I think for the average voter, I think Sarah's right. They kind of feel tired and a bit stale.
Yeah, and like this, and I think I'm quite fair. Like there's people in there who I would consider to be quite smart and quite talented, ideologically different from me, but that's totally fine. Like Louise O'Reilly, I think she's a good performer. They've got like some good people, and I just think the whole thing has become a bit stale, and they're making strategic mistakes on some of the big issues. And I noticed last Saturday I was out, I went into Bath Avenue, the Bath pub beside Lansdowne Road there, and that's where I grew up. And one of my closest, oldest friends, her parents were having a 40th wedding anniversary drinks kind of thing in what's now called the Bath, but when I was growing up it was called Murray's. And it was full of people there originally from Pier Street, and it was full of people that I know because I obviously grew up around there. People from Pier Street, people from Ringsend, a big mix of people. And like traditionally, I would have gone down, had banter with a lot of those people about Sinn Fein, and there would have been a good number of like comments, and people kind of asked me about different things, and because they would have known that I was traditionally Fianna Fáil, and they'd know my dad and stuff like that. And I really noticed that nobody said anything to me about Sinn Fein whatsoever. That's the first time in a long time that's happened.
Yeah.
I think that there's a kind of it's just weakening support there, and they need to do something, and they need to do something fast to pull that out. Because if, as some people predict, and I've seen a couple of predictions, that there was could be a general election on the same day as the local and European elections, I think that's really, really bad for Sinn Fein. I think that kind of chaos does them no favours.
Well, I think it's more, there's another factor here which I think is being underrated. Because the Irish Times also had a poll out last week on the end, which was their something they called Snapshot, which is basically, all it asks is, what are you thinking about right now? What is the most important issue to you right now? And the top two were immigration, was what 23% of people said. 19% said housing. Then all the way after that, it was social policies at 4%, crime at 4%, taxes 4%, cost of living 3%, Palestine-Israel conflict 3%, climate change 3%.
Crime was only 4%. Wow.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that happens there is that like, and I always say this with immigration and housing, is that those two issues are linked. If you're concerned about immigration, it's because you think it's having an impact on housing. And it's probably also because you think it's having an impact on crime. And I think if you were to take immigration out and redistribute the top priority, it'll be housing, and crime will get some of it, and maybe taxes will get some. But like you're only allowed to pick one issue, so that's why I think.
Yeah, I also think that people can be, with all due respect to our average voter, what they say the main issue that they're concerned about and the issue that they actually vote on can often be very different.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people for years
people will say health service. They like, it's not. This is my opinion. It shows in the numbers. They don't vote on the health service
because most of us are never in a hospital. And that we all will be in a hospital, but most of us, you hear these things about people lying on trolleys for 6 weeks, but doesn't affect most of us. It's only when it's your own granny lying on a trolley for 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's like the way people, like for a certain period of some people's lives, the biggest, most pressing issue to them is childcare costs, and then one day it's over and they never think about it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Certainly don't vote on it.
But come back to my point. Can I just finish my point on Sinn Fein? Just to say that. If you look at those figures, immigration, housing dominating them, and then look at where the Palestine-Israel conflict is, which is at 3%. Now, obviously, maybe more than 3% care about it instead of immigration or housing. But it strikes me, if you listen to Sinn Fein for the last 2 months, all they're talking about is Gaza, 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 Gaza. And I just don't think the public really care that much. I think it's a very small number of people in the country who are, I'm sure I'll get comments saying, I care. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about saying in the broad population, I just don't think it's a massive issue. And yet to listen to Sinn Fein on the far left, they're on nothing else. And I think that paints them as a little bit out of touch. I really do.
But it's two different questions, though, John. The question is like whether you care about something and whether you walk into a ballot box and say, I've done my research and I've found the candidate who absolutely reflects my view on that particular issue, and that's the only person I'm voting for because of that. That's that's a minute amount of voters.
Yeah.
So like you can care all you like about whatever you want, but like whether or not that translates into how you behave in the ballot box is a completely different question. And look, these things are complicated, and snapshots are, snapshots for a reason. But a poll, there's certain themes in these polls that has been going on for quite a long time, more than a year. And that is that even when, like, if I was speaking from the government party's point of view, is that even when Sinn Féin are losing 4 percentage points, it's not coming back.
No, it's not.
So like, if they're all the same, and there's a lot of that kind of, they're all the same, and 4% is being taken out of the Sinn Féin pot, okay, I think Fianna Fáil went up 1, but like, fine. But Fine Gael was no change. That number is going elsewhere, and that should be extremely worrisome to the main parties.
Yeah, look, I don't think the polls are. My take on the polls is they're not showing how bad things really are for the government parties. I just don't think they are. My wife Orla was talking to somebody last weekend who is known to both of us, who I would always have put down as being sort of a rock solid government voter, retired teacher, in her early 70s, certainly has never cast a vote other than for Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael at general elections. Not a partisan of either, but like very much a centrist. And she said, this is the worst government we've ever had. The worst government we've ever had. And she was thinking of voting for an independent for the next election. Like, and if they're losing people like that, I would have said rock solid. But no.
And also people, people have often said and have said to me, I don't know who to vote for. But there's starting to be options. Independent Ireland's a new party. There's independents. There is other options.
Yeah, there are rumours doing the round.
I love the way, by the way, that I forgot about Labour there for a sec. Sorry.
So,
You have that. You have that option. Just throwing it out. I'll just throw that out in the stoop and see if the cat licks it up.
or at least one more election, you have that option.
Yeah.
But there are rumours doing the rounds that Independent Ireland, which is the party led by Michael Collins, the independent TD for Cork, which has not, I'll be honest, made a massive first impression on me. Even though I wish them very well, but like I sometimes
why do you say that now, John?
Well, purely in terms of this is not a criticism. Let me finish what I'm saying. When I say they haven't made a massive first impression, is that I really don't get the impression that they've really launched themselves yet. Like it's there, it's in the background. But I'm hearing rumours, Sarah, that there are some serious people thinking of running for them in the European elections. I will say no more than that, but that will be very
I've heard those rumours also, and I couldn't possibly comment. Oh God, that's actually that's starting to sound like it's me.
That is starting to sound like it's you.
It's not me.
I think you'd be great.
Thanks.
Ryan,
I would rather put out a campfire with my face.
That's quite drastic. I think Brussels is bad. It's not quite that bad.
I do not. Like, I can't imagine anything worse. No, it's not me.
If it's not you, it's not Mr. Sarah Ryan, is it? He's not thinking of running, throwing his hat in the ring.
Like, honestly, he does. Do you know what? If he moved to Brussels, I probably wouldn't notice any difference in the housework. But no, he isn't going to Brussels when he has 3 children and a dental practice now.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we'll leave it there.
No, but there is some interesting people who are getting involved in that part, and I think there's a lot of work going on. In fairness, behind the scenes, there's a huge amount of work involved in setting up a new party.
Yeah, that's all I was saying when I was saying they hadn't made a huge first impression. I didn't say they hadn't made a good first impression. I said they hadn't made a huge first impression. Like I haven't seen a lot from them as yet, but I'm hearing rumors in the background, which apparently you're hearing as well and can't comment on. So
yeah, and I know. I've gotten to know and know personally a good few people who are involved with them, like behind the scenes, and they're very smart, talented people. So I would be quietly confident that you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it there. It's always good to end on a pleasant surprise. Thanks a million for joining me, Sarah, as ever. Any final thoughts?
No, but it just drank something that went down the wrong way. So I was really hoping you were going to come back to me.
Well, you see,
but no, I don't have any final thoughts. I don't. I'm looking forward to the next week because I think that there's a few stories that are rolling along there, like Catherine Martin. You know, who knows what she'll come up with next, John.
Well, I'm just looking forward to the bank holiday on Monday to celebrate.
Oh, I keep forgetting it's the bank holiday.
Yes, to celebrate what the Irish Times referred to today as our saint, goddess, alcohol brewer, advocate for women's choice, Bridget. I didn't know one.
Or you could just shorten that to Captain Hindsight.
Captain Hindsight. Yes, the bank holiday for Captain Hindsight is on Monday. Everyone enjoy that. And Sarah and I will be back here next week for another edition of The Week That Really Was. Have a great weekend and thanks a million for listening.